The first round of conversation around the Ari Aster's 2025 film Eddington about a small town ravaged by the 2020's biggest issues: COVID, the George Floyd uprisings, police brutality, and everything in between, some conspiracy too. It's not a centrist movie. And I think that conversation sprouted from a handful of places. One of them being this movie uses images, tokens, phrases that are found in the political arena, both in 2020 and in 2025. And so these words that are used in the right wing or by wacko conspiracists or the protest chants being used or social media slogans or indigenous justice language, more and more and more and more and more and more. All of this leads to something that Ari Aster's very open to, that he wanted to make an inscrutable movie. Something that's gonna be as polarizing, as thought-provoking as the modern age. And I think he succeeded. I think he succeeded because this movie, more than anything, is a trick mirror. A trick mirror that reflects whatever you thought about that time or this time. You, the audience, and the state of the American politic in 2020. And due to that, this movie has nothing more to say other than, yeah, things are wacky. There are a handful of major items that we are going to cover in this. But before I do that, I want to say I am AP. I am one of the hosts of Dove Weather. This is a podcast about media and art and we focus on queer, trans, Latin subject matters. We talk about a lot of joy and a lot of fun. My co-host Marcy is on some of the episodes. I am doing this on video for the first time, so I appreciate it if you liked and subscribe. And I am gonna walk through Eddington. And the major items that we are going to talk about is can be kind of split up into this kind of like verses. Joe Cross versus Ted Garcia. Anti-masking versus COVID precaution. Status quo over radical change. And as this movie goes on, you see these factions and items come into conflict. So I want to start with Joe Cross. Joe Cross is the sheriff of a 2,000 person strong Eddington, a town in New Mexico. He's an older gentleman who's married to a sickly and kind of ghostly wife and a lived-in conspiracy broken mother-in-law. The thing to note about Joe Cross is that he's a fool. Like from the very beginning to the very end, so much of this movie shows Joe Cross doing foolish behavior, acting strangely, not being very connected to himself and his point in history, not knowing how to like deal with the issues of 2020 and falling into some of the easiest and most alluring thoughts of that time that many people have fallen through. Like he's really a guy about the status quo, and his arc is generally, I don't buy the current issues of 2020. He gets at the start of the movie, he gets confronted by two tribal policemen, and they are telling him that he needs to mask up because he is on tribal land. He, of course, doesn't want to do that. Why? Maybe it's because of his asthma. Maybe it's because of his conservatism. Maybe he just doesn't care about the rules. Maybe he thinks he's over the rules. Probably every excuse that you've heard about anti-maxing, he would probably spit it out. And right there, in that beginning scene with him and the two tribal police, shows what this movie's about. It's taking 2020 and flattening it out for convenience. And this thread continues. It's this is a movie that hits on a lot of big topics that we are seeing still, even 5 years later. And this flattening is there to just make Joe Cross a more complex character, a more complex fool. I love a complex fool. It starts this function of seeing Joe Cross as a kind of a stubborn man. He's stubborn in a very simple way. He doesn't want a mask. We see that from the very beginning. But he will stand in line to walk into a grocery store. He doesn't want to wear a mask. Or he loves his wife, or at least the image of his wife. But does he lend a hand to deal with her trauma? No, maybe. No, though. The movie kind of shows it that he's a little bit of a emotionally absentee husband. And he even goes on to like maybe show another level of love by supporting his wife in her like creative endeavor. But like emotionally, no. He has no love for the George Floyd uprisings that he sees, even if they're the minor version of it. But even still, he kind of asks his black deputy if he is okay after the murder of George Floyd is spread throughout the internet. Does this make him a caring man? Does this make him a loving husband, a good boss, a patron and high-minded person in the community? No. In comparison to the flattening of everything else, yeah, he looks that way. And he looks that way with his foil, his antagonist. This movie is all about Joe Cross and his endeavors, so he needs an antagonist. And his antagonist is Ted Garcia. He plays this regional elite focused on big pets projects. He's kind of a single dad. He's liberal. He's a very politically savvy mayor with connections to the New Mexico governor, a multinational corporation that's looking to build a data center in Eddington. And he kind of makes himself this burden carrier for the town. He actually cares about this town. He wants this town to be there. And his face is all over this movie. He is on posters, he's on commercials, he's on flyers, he's on lawn signs. He's politically savvy. He knows how to get his image out. And the climax of his political savviness is seen in this fundraiser scene, filled with regional elites and politicos there to maybe give some money and maybe win some favor. And this party looks so atrocious. It's so bad. The music is bad. The food looks like it sucks. No one's dancing. Ain't nobody having a good time there. And some of the fashion is, it's T-rash. It's an unfortunate party, but it's also the climax of his like presence politically. Ted Garcia's political savviness is like overshadows Joe Cross's lack of it, and he is played by uh, Pedro Pascal. He and he does it great. He looks so good in this. His hair looks great. His mustache looks great. He kind of walks about like this liberal kind of scum that like a lot of people know about. He's kind of like this political operative that was uh, very. They had a highlighted moment in 2020 about kind of like do as I say, not as I do. Kind of the Nancy Pelosi, Gavin Newsom, Andrew Cuomo's of the world, and and Pascal plays him great. He plays him great, and uh, akin to Joaquin Phoenix's Joe Cross. Excuse me, Joe Cross, and I think both of these actors come in with a lot of energy to embody this flattened image of what it means to be like a bumbling sheriff and what it means to be kind of like a craven, money hungry liberal. I guess they're both money hungry. This Joe versus Ted Garcia represents this general position that liberal forces in America are the status quo versus the conservative ones. Where conservative forces can cloak themselves as insurgents, outsiders, taking on the state, which none of this is the truth. So looking at this and looking at these two that represent this kind of ideological opposites, they also represent some of the culture war that was happening at that time. Masking or not masking, anti-mask or COVID precaution. There are multiple times throughout this movie that has people tell Joe, "Hey, put on a mask." And sometimes this person is Ted Garcia. He tells him to put on a mask because there's COVID, and he's actually protecting the town. There are moments in this where people at a grocery store kind of clap when an anti-masker gets kicked out. And it's kind of all over the place. In the first half of this movie, there is this point that's anti-mask or COVID precaution. And I don't really know what the movie has to say about that, because some on the COVID precaution side of things is Ted Garcia, who is like such a little freak, little weirdo that like you don't want this guy to be the one throwing out statistics about COVID precaution and how wearing masks actually can reduce the spread of COVID, which is the truth. I mean, you should wear a mask. Like, wearing a mask is OP, especially in Chicago this summer with all the bad air coming in, for all the smoke coming in from Canada. Yeah, wear a mask. Wear a mask. But Aster doesn't. I don't think he cares about choosing a side in this. He's definitely willing to say, hey, isn't it a little bit freaky, a little bit odd that, both of these people are thinking this and thinking that? That's kind of where the centrism kind of comes in. But it's not, it doesn't really get to that point. Because Ted represents this unknowing force in modern liberalism. The kind that a lot of people have seen. I'm sure you've seen it. I've seen it. You've seen it. I'm sure you have. And Joe Cross represents this other side that isn't exactly. It isn't. They're not in the right side either. They're not in the better side either. It's kind of just like a me type thing. And so when you present these two, it kind of you're kind of left to wonder which one is Ari Aster saying is kind of the more valuable one to think about, and the movie doesn't get there because Joe Cross repeats multiple times that COVID isn't in Eddington. But I like, how does he know? How does he know? He doesn't. In this that is regular obfuscation found in 2020. All of it based on the comfortable truth that pathogens are invisible to the human eye and to the human senses. You can only really track a pathogen like this by testing, and in the movie Eddington, we don't see any testing happening in Eddington. The movie actually shows us this kind of formidable, like disease carrying homeless man coming in to town, and he's the one spreading COVID. He's kind of like this tumbleweed that comes in with all this miasma. Now, is that true? I think to a certain type of person that wants to see this movie for the trick mirror that it is, and maybe has a more conservative bend, people would take away that, yeah, that's kind of how disease is passed along. The right wing of America believes disease vectors are the homeless, immigrants, queers, or any other vagrant that they hate, which is objectively not true. Viruses infect people, so anyone can be infected. The movie doesn't say that, though. I don't know if the movie cares. I mean, because it's such a huge marker about how Ari Aster built this movie around the, yeah, things are wacky. That's kind of the whole point of this movie. He's saying, yeah, things are wacky because no one dies of the virus, no one gets hospitalized. Joe Cross gets COVID halfway through the movie, but from there it's just kind of a cough. It's almost forgotten on the second half of the movie when the bigger threat of Antifa shows up in Eddington. And so from there, I kind of want to talk about, well, the status quo versus radical change. Because both of these characters, Joe Cross and Ted Garcia, represent the status quo. They're both government officials who oversee a depleting town. They have very similar, nice homes. They share a past with Rabbit, Emma Stone's character. Both these characters use women as cudgel or images for their own end. Joe Cross fabricates this assault story of Rabbit to hurt Ted Garcia's re-election. Ted hangs over his previous relationship with Rabbit as kind of a fuck you, as kind of as a demonization, as kind of a demoralization. In his re-election commercial, Ted Garcia uses his dead wife as kind of a sympathetic point, so you should vote for him. Both of these characters don't care about women. I mean, Joe Cross, this fool, this in a very flattened world, becomes a sympathetic figure for caring about his wife. But this type of like emotional neglect keeps Rabbit stunted. Like there has to be a reason why when Vernon shows up, this cult leader played by Austin Butler can sweep her away. The movie doesn't tell us why. It kind of gestures at it, but it doesn't tell us why. It just makes it seem that like Austin Butler brought his pretty eyes and gave a nice, rousing speech about how good her art is, which it is not. But there's something there, because that type of emotional neglect that stunted her was able to be exploited by Vernon, so he can go and abuse her instead. And then there is this other character, this other woman, Sarah. She's the love interest of Ted Garcia's kid, Eric, who's just kind of like this shitty kid, this shitty like mayor's son kid. Yeah, there doesn't seem to be anything really positive about him. He just rides his bicycle, which is chill, smokes weed, and hangs out. I guess that's just kind of like the teenage life for some. But yeah, he isn't shown to have any real interest, any real skill, any real point of view. And Sarah is this like socially conscious young woman who verbalizes the concepts around the George Floyd uprising. You know, the anti-blackness found in America, police brutality, and so on. And she is done kind of like she's presented in the first scene with her as holding an Angela Davis book. She's at the first demonstration for the George Floyd uprising. She's at the more dramatic one with the white supremacists, counter protesters. She really has those two notes. She's a political totem for the audience to identify as the woke character. And she is also kind of like this sexual prize for at least three characters. Eric Garcia, Brian, who has no last name, but he kind of stands in as the little weirdo in the town, and Mike Cook, the black sheriff's deputy. And at the end of her arc, there is no political victory. Like, she doesn't win anything. She really is just this like sexual prize that is set aside to complete the story of these three dudes. And one of those dudes is Mike Cook. And he's another example of how this movie is kind of about the status quo. He sits well within the status quo. He's gun hungry. He is the son of a police captain. He's looking for a daddy figure. And he's also festooned with cryptocurrency nonsense. You could see multiple books on his desk at the precinct. And he's also the only black character in the movie. So in a year where police brutality to the black community is the other major issue in America, Cook is never presented as pro or anti the George Floyd uprisings. Even so, Joe and his other deputy frame him for Ted's murder that Joe Cross did. I mean, this is another example of Ari Aster being like, ain't things wacky? Yeah, things are wacky. Yeah. So, like, well, once again, like, is this a centrist movie? I don't know, but the conversation about this being a centrist movie or anti-liberal or anti-conservative or pro-liberal or pro-conservative kind of fall apart. Ari Aster absolutely saw the digital conversation around this time and overlaid it to a film. And he did it well. I mean, it's kind of a interesting movie that way. But it's not reality. It's not the reality that 2020 was. It was heavily influenced by the digital conversation around that time. And I saw a couple of interviews where he kind of confirms that. I mean, the movie does great there. But Ari Aster doesn't go further to provide an alternative. So I And that's kind of my biggest issue. I think the reason why so many think of this as a centrist movie is because Ari Aster presents these quote unquote two sides, but no alternative. And the way that he does that is through the language that is being used in this time, and very specifically the conspiratorial language used in this time. I mean, in 2020, you and I heard a lot of different weirdo shit about the pandemic being planned, or about it being a way to weaken the United States. One of my favorite ones was around the skepticism of the mRNA vaccine, which skepticism in science is like normal, right? I mean, that's valuable. It just falls flat when the same political operatives that promote alternatives to the vaccine or anything dealing with COVID precaution also try to give you this science-derived alternative, like a dewormer, for example. Because once again, this movie it's not taking a position. I mean, this movie is pinned by so many tinfoil ass thoughts. I'm not really interested in debunking each one of them, because I think when you hear someone can find deep meaning through convoluted algebra, where numbers are taken from words, and then it tells you the future, or some truth from beyond. I mean, I think you call BS on that. I think a lot of people did. I think most people did. Maybe not the loudest ones, but I think most people did. So I'm not super interested in debunking each one. But one thing I want to note is the necessity to know these concepts. To be politically active or in conversation of power in the 2020s, you must know about this tinfoil ideas, which I personally hate to know. Like, why do I have to know about this? Like, I don't want to know about this. And I don't want you to know it either. But, like, damn, we kind of have to. We kind of have to. Because the U.S. president and his cronies believe in it. And they use it in political speech all the time. I mean, the status quo upholders do too. I mean, at this time that I'm recording and will be publishing, we are entering the second month of this national conversation on whether or not the U.S. president is a child abuser. I mean, that's kind of where things are. So you kind of need to know these concepts to be able to engage. So when Ari Aster tells you, me, and everyone else that watches Eddington that, yeah, things are wacky, he's right. I mean, they are wacky. They're very wacky. But why not put a name to it? Like, why not say the reasoning? I mean, we all kind of know that shit is wacky. So, Ari, why not put a name to it? Why not say where it's derived? I mean, I kind of think I know why. And so, but before I get there, I want to explain something. At the nucleus of this conversation about whether or not This movie is centrist, has to do with imagery. The imagery presented throughout this movie, and that being the current political secular imagery, and kind of how that is used for new horror, for like a new imagery for horror. And so the secular conspiracy thought is the scenery used to say all of this stuff is wacky, all of this stuff is odd, and maybe you should fear it. Ari Aster doesn't describe this movie as a horror film. But I see the DNA there. I mean, because religious imagery is used for horror, for the horror genre constantly. I mean, there's a new Exorcist movie every year, plus the 1,000 other films that use Christian imagery for spooky shit. And this is true for other religions and other spiritual beliefs. But as people are kind of losing this connection to historical and traditional religion and the imagery attached to it, a new one needs to take its place. I believe this type of American conspiratorial thought is one of those. It's influenced by white evangelical and esoteric thought, of course. That is why belief is such a strong part of conspiratorial thinking, where proof and evidence are secondary to the narrative. As you can see in Joe Cross and his multiple rambling, nonsensical, but conspiratorial keyword driven rambles, speeches that he gives. And due to the narrative being the highest necessity, you don't need a powerful being or a traditional one like God to influence them. The conspiracy is so vague that you can overlay whatever is most persuasive to you, whatever can convince you to follow some obvious lie. It can be aliens, angels, politicians, dragons, whatever. This by itself is horror. When you witness someone putting all their worldly issues onto aliens, you kind of get freaked out. Because it's not some green guy from Andromeda that hiked up your rent. That was your landlord. Or imagine a person placing all their health issues on the influence of a higher demon of the seventh ring of hell. But it wasn't some pointy-headed creature that rejected your insurance claim for a deviated symptom. It was your insurance company trying to keep some profit. It's capital. It's people that are seeking profit over anything else. Real people that seek to, as the movie describes, build data centers that house some freaky thing called AI. So much of this town of Eddington is empty. I mean, there are scenes in the center of town or around town at homes where it's just empty. There is no one. The most action, the most activity is when some of the protests are happening. And there is no one else in every other scene. The stores look empty. They look like they've been empty for years. I mean, some pagan creature didn't scare away business. It was tactical underdevelopment for the sake of ripping out more wages from everyday people. So I think about how, yeah, Ari Aster uses these weird images that have conjured up over the last 5-7 years, whatever, that you and I, as the many, might be a little weirded out by it, about this conspiratorial thought. And so this kind of creates a disjointed view of what the movie is presenting, about what you think, and about what the movie is saying, what Ari is saying. Because so much of this movie has real life reflected. I mean, Ted Garcia is hoarding toilet paper. Joe Cross's home is packed with medicine and air purifiers. The masks are the same ones we wore. The idea of being 6 feet apart is the same one that we heard. Twitter and all this other social media nonsense were the same ones that were pushed out onto us. Many people heard and suffered some level of indignity from some quack telling them that they're wrong, that they shouldn't listen to the experts in this virus and on how to be safe and how to treat your neighbor. We all kind of went through this. We all kind of heard this conspiratorial bullshit. Like I said, Ari Aster's right when he says, yeah, things are wacky. But this movie stops at that level. The way this movie ends is just so funny. It's so silly. These Antifa super soldiers are dropped into Eddington via a private jet with a globe shape and a hand over it. What seems like 3 super soldiers start attacking Eddington and Joe Cross because he got his ass kicked by a homeless man. I mean, maybe? I mean, they have no motivation to attack Eddington. Their whole backstory is that they were in Portland and now they're in Eddington. And maybe they're anti-cop. Like, these are crack operators, but get busted by the main fool in this movie. So almost there, it's like they're super powerful, super beings that like took down a precinct in Portland, but also one guy, one fella was able to take them down. There is no real life equivalent to that, or to these figures that Ari Aster put out. I don't know why he put this fiction there so late. I mean, from what I saw, is that this movie was written before 2020. Once that happened, kind of the angle of COVID was added to the script. Part of me believes that this movie was written more as a Western with some political valence in whatever form that might be. The COVID stuff just made it more contemporaneous and therefore maybe easier to greenlight. I mean, I don't know. I have no evidence for that. But there's this strong tone change halfway through that is unignorable. I mean, there must be some reason why a chunk of this movie becomes a pathetic crime drama that ends with a equally pathetic shootout. Like in that massive shootout across Eddington, empty as hell. Like none of it is shot as like cool or powerful. Joe Cross isn't seen as some badass Rambo type, even though he is holding an M60. He just looks like this fumbling idiot that up until his last moment, he is the same person that he was in the beginning. Incapable of engaging with the current uh, issue in the way that he has to. And even at his like last moments, he only really kind of gets lucky. He doesn't have a massive victory where he is able to put a hole inside one of these Antifa super soldiers. He gets one guy kind of by accident, and he gets the other, and the other guy gets got by Brian, no last name. It's a pathetic shootout. And that might be part of the original, more Western script, but I don't know. It is just strange that that comes in. And this movie goes on to end with a jump cut with more general right-wing grossness, some just oddities that we're all kind of know about in 2025. Right-wing weirdos being rewarded for being weirdos, whether they are given a platform to spew their hate and therefore a lot of money, and then they move up the social economic ladder. They get to meet Congress people, and then also there is this massive data center that actually gets built, and Ari Aster kind of says that is the whole point of this movie. I don't really know if I believe him. I think that just kind of is very useful phrasing in 2025, where AI seems to be on the downswing, or at least a lot more people find it for what it is, a kind of pathetic thing. So he went out to kind of make this point of polarization, inscrutability, as he said. And I think he succeeded. I mean, I think it's there. Like, so much of the conversation around this movie is it not just, is it centrist? Because it is not centrist. Or is it right wing? Or is it left wing? Or so on and so on. Is it? So much of this is because no alternative was given. And so did Ari Aster succeed on making a polarizing movie that is reflective of the current state of America? Yeah, he did it. I think my question is, after 5 years of COVID, 10 years of Trump, 25 years of rampant Islamophobia, 60 years of neoliberalism, 250 years of the American state, and 400 years of anti-blackness, is that enough critique? No. This is the final part of the video. Thank you for watching. Please like and subscribe, share it, send it to your friend that wanted to see this movie but hasn't been convinced. Go watch it if you want to watch it, or don't watch it if you don't want to watch it. It's just a movie. It's not that big of a lift. It's like 2.5 hours long. And I appreciate you giving me some support here on my first on-camera video for Dove Weather. We have more episodes to come. We release one every week on Monday. So I thank you for that, and I'll see you in the next one.